that. Let's go ahead and have a conversation. Sarah, welcome to the conversation. How are you?
I'm good, Keith. How are you?
It's quite a day, and it's been quite a year. And I don't know how the last, and so for those who are watching and listening, whenever they are, because this is going to go on YouTube, this is being recorded in December of 2023. And so um, lots of stuff going on between now and the end of the calendar year. And oh my God, we're going into 2024. It's really hard to imagine. So, um, but I liked, so before we started recording, I liked kind of what you were saying in non-negotiables. Did we really ever touch on those? I've never had a conversation on what is non-negotiable unless it had something to do with, a business, partnership. Like we have to do this, X, Y, Z. Can we talk about that in terms of our personal lives?
Sure. And maybe it's the lawyer in me that
Maybe it
calls
is.
them that potentially. But I'm always curious what people's non-negotiables are. And I think if you throw that question out and you say, what are the non-negotiables in your life? It is hard to answer, or harder sometimes to answer.
Yeah.
If you say, what are the non-negotiables in your day or in your morning? All of a sudden it starts to drill it down and you can see themes and it starts to clarify for it.
Mhm.
So when you look at your routine, what are the things you say like every day?
Oh,
This
then
is,
I do have one.
huh?
Do have at least one non-negotiable for life, period, and that is I exercise. That is
Yep.
a non-negotiable. I will exercise every day, even when sick and have a fever. And the only time I couldn't have a day of exercise was I was in the hospital. I had a heart attack, back in 2022. And I couldn't exercise because they told me to get back in bed.
Yeah, you and I are similar in that way. I have to move my body, and it's evolved over time as to what I had to do. And I ran marathons for a while, and I did. I've never been a big like weightlifter. That's never been my thing, but I've done all sorts of Pilates and bar and yoga and this and that. And right now I'm in a very flowy yoga phase of my life that incorporates like some Tai Chi type movements. And it really is much about the mobility and the pliability and the plasticity as it is like, can I hit this certain pose? And then for me, I have to walk. Like I have to walk every day.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm in that same space. I used to be a runner up until about maybe 10 years ago. And I always blame it on my knees, but I really blame it on the house I moved into, which was a rental at the time, and the floor. And so backstory is I have to use a treadmill. I was in the space where I was just using a treadmill because I live in Virginia and North Carolina, and there was hurricanes every season. So I just kind of traded the outdoors for the indoors. But you can't run on a treadmill when the treadmill's like this. Like it's not level. The
No,
floors were
that's not
just
good for
hard. It was
you.
like 100-year-old house. The floors weren't level. But now I'm back outside because I'm training to hike the AT, the Appalachian Trail. And so I
When are
totally
you
get
going to
it.
do that?
What?
When are you going to do that?
Target date is March 2025. And so for those who are listening, I'm part of I've organized a campaign to raise $1 million for suicide awareness, prevention, and grief healing. So attempted to. I always say I committed suicide twice. Actually, only once, and attempted it again. But that's that's not the story today. Today is about non-negotiables. So we're exercise people. So that's part of our what we won't give up, regardless of what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think kind of you hit on something though, that we have to be flexible in our non-negotiables.
it's tough.
It is tough, but it's it's like, okay, I have to exercise. And if I can't run 5 miles a day, maybe I can walk. And if I can't walk outside, maybe I could at least make some laps around my house, or I can jump up and down, or I can, dance around the kitchen or something. Right. So what is it where we're moving our body and moving our energy?
Mhm.
And I'd suggest that to anybody. I mean, I think anytime, even if you can only sit in your chair and you can just do this, um, it will help you feel better.
Can you talk to me a little bit about that? I know you and Carrie Allen talk about energy and energy flow, and I think Marlene does to a bit. I have not had that conversation with her. Now, I just know exercise makes me feel good. It makes me feel good mentally. It makes me feel good, physically. Um, I kind of like the way it looks on my body afterwards, and so there's a lot of benefits to it. But it's at this point, it's both an addiction and a need. Like I need, now I'm walking 9+ miles a day. Most people think that's insane, and it probably is. Uh, and I would probably do some of that even if I wasn't training for the AT hike, um, because I would still need to get out there. And once I push myself to a certain level, I got to stay there, if not push it to another level. So that's a lot of energy.
A lot of energy. And if you think about it, we are electromagnetic beings. And the more we can do to raise our frequency, raise our voltage,
Hmm.
the better our whole human system is going to function. And so if you think about it from a frequency perspective, like think about the radio, right? There are all these different channels on the radio, and you can tune into the pop hits, you can tune into the oldies, you can tune into the country, right? We have that same ability frequency wise in our own body. So are we going to tune into healthy? Are we going to tune into fear? And then those frequencies show up in different places in different ways in our body. And if you're tuned into the fear frequency, it starts to get stuck in your body.
Hmm.
And so the way that in part you can move that emotion out, that frequency out, is by movement. And so if you know anything about like Tai Chi, they start Tai Chi a lot of times with just this kind of bouncing almost.
Okay.
Um, and that is in part because you're bouncing, you're moving your energy. Now, it has some other really beneficial physical effects too, because if you think of your lymphatic system, which is the drainage system for your whole body, it doesn't have a pump in the way that your heart pumps your circulatory system and all the blood through your veins. So your lymph system moves everything through by you actually moving. So there's some simple things like that. Like if you were to just kind of gently rub down on your neck, and like on the left side is where most of that lymph drains in your body. And it's just this gentle type of rubbing. So if you start to feel like, oh, I'm getting a little stuffier, or right, I'm not quite as clear, just move a little bit of that lymph, move it under your arm, like just really simple, easy massage type things. And then from the movement perspective, there's like my favorite thing in the body right now that I'm totally obsessed with, which is fascia. Are you familiar with fascia at
No,
all?
you're about to educate this old
Okay.
man. Go ahead.
Fascia is, for anybody listening, like the coolest thing. Um, Fascia is this interwoven structure of basically collagen, and it is actually what holds our body up. So we think it's our bones. It's not, it's our fascia through this system of what's called tensegrity. So it's the tension that holds it up. Well, fascia is what they call piezoelectric. So when you move, when you put pressure on that fascia, it creates an electrical charge. That electrical charge then helps to create structured water and run our body.
Hmm.
But fascia is wrapped around all of our organs, it's wrapped around all of our muscles. It's basically these kind of sacs almost that our skin exists in. It's one of the first things that forms in our body. And it's really why it's important that we're well hydrated too, because water flows through the fascia.
Okay.
Um, and it's like where all the potential lies in your body. It is what, if you put your hand on the stove and you pull it back because it's hot, we think of that as our nervous system. That's the fascial system, because fascia is so much faster. It has those sensors even more than the nervous system. And it's something that it's amazing that we're just over the last 20 years really starting to delve into and understand. And I think there's only one video right now of live fascia or fascia in a live human at the moment.
Wow. So a lot of what now I'm thinking of how to stay healthy other than being hydrated is to exercise this component of our body, is to keep it alive and healthy and well. Are there ways of doing that outside of movement
Well,
and
movement's the
hydration?
biggest one for your fascia. There are some specific kind of fascial movements you can do, and it's all connected throughout your body. So you'll hear people talk about myofascial release, which is a way fascia likes just general moving that you would do for the lymph system. It likes twisting. It likes if you kind of pin part of it and then twist part of it and breathe into it.
Hmm.
Um, and we
Well, these are
can,
things I'm not aware of, so I'm going to have to do a deeper dive study into this. Can we get back to your non-negotiables? Now, mine was
yeah,
exercise.
here's what I have more than one, as you could
Oh,
guess. Um, but they're pretty simple for the most part. Um, I like good sleep
you like to
and
sleep?
sleep.
Oh,
Sleep
oh,
is one of my non-negotiables these days, and it used to not be. I used to be the up at 5 a.m. so I could exercise,
yeah.
do all the stuff with my kids, corporate job, come home, feed the kids, and then I'd work until, again, midnight, something like that. Um,
But those
with
were
the
the
thought
demands
that
of an
I'll sleep when
attorney.
I'm dead, type of thing.
Those were the demands of your role as an attorney, yeah? Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
And when you like what you do and you're into it and you have people that are depending on you, it's easy to get kind of sucked in. So in the moment, I didn't, it was like, oh, this is just what it is.
yeah.
Um, Now I think sleep is foundational to our health and well-being.
When did that, when did you realize that? Because that's not always easy to recognize because we're so caught up in living and especially when there's responsibilities. And then on top of that, taking care of other people. And so you're mom, I'm a dad. And so we've got little ones to take care of, and mine's 13. So there are just things that have to get done, sleep or no sleep. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was proud of the fact, like, oh, 5 hours sleep, I'm good, right? And then I went, oh my God, this is probably like killing me slowly
Yeah.
or maybe faster. And part of that is just education. Mine always seems to start with like I read a book on type of thing, and then I have to go super deep into it because I have to question it all.
Mhm.
And then if I actually come back and pay attention to how it feels in my body and how I can show up in my day and how I can relate to the people I care about and how, oh, wow, like I feel less irritable. I feel less anxious. I have
Mm.
more energy for all of this. All of these little things start to stack up. And yeah, I mean, I can get by on not much sleep, um, but I don't want to anymore.
And the reason I ask you this is because I have lots of different conversations, many of which the people are at some level or in some degree an entrepreneur, and they're very proud of that. So they've stepped out of their corporate space and they're either a speaker or they're small business owner or whatever that looks like. And I personally know people who, are up at 5, whatever, wherever they are in on the globe, are up early and they're running 14, not running, but they're working, 14, easily 14, 15 hours. And that's meaning business, eating, saying hi to their kids. And they do this day in and day out. And then on Saturday, or whenever that one day is where they get an opportunity to say, shut it all down, and their bodies crashed. And so they sleep, quite literally, they sleep all day, sometimes. And I do get those stories. And so, yeah. So how do we,
Yeah, I think this is something Carrie and I are going to be speaking more and more about in the new year. But if your whole, I like to call it your human system, right? So not just your nervous system, not just your lymphatic system, not just your fascia circular, right? If your human system is dysregulated,
hmm,
then everything else in your world is dysregulated on some level. And yes, we can for a couple days do something else, but it all starts to pay the toll, right? There is a price to it. And we hear so much about balance, right? Like I have to find balance. Well, guess what? There is no balance. There is balancing, but there is no balance.
I've
And
heard you talk
so
about that before. I've heard that somewhere. You said that somewhere
I
before.
probably say because I words mean so much to me again. And so I really think like I mean, maybe there's the state of balance for like 1 microsecond. But to talk about like, oh, we're gonna find this balance, and then when we get there, everything's gonna be great. Mm, That's not really the reality of the world we live in. You've got all these different tugs. And so just like with the non-negotiables, if you say, okay, my non-negotiables are sleep, they are movement of some sort, mine get into hydration. Um, how am I going to do those? What does it look like? What does it look like for the season? If I know I have a big product launch coming up, I know I may be spending more time working, and that may be weighing the balance, right? So, how am I going to make sure I'm showing up for my kids, showing up for the people in my life, showing up for myself, right? Where am I going to put that movement, that sleep type of stuff in there? And then how long can I be out of balance in that really heavy work way before I need to bring it back up in a little bit different way and have those trade offs?
That's easier said than done. Um, I'm assuming because you transitioned and just going from some of your backstory, out of being a lawyer. I know it's still kind of part of who you are, but so you had to relearn some things. Uh, like you said, our human system, your human system, you had to learn how to be healthy. And that sounds so weird, just even saying it. Um, but we don't. I think life has put us into these thinking models that says that we have to do X, Y, and Z, um, at the sacrifice of other things that are more natural, breathing,
Mhm.
sleeping, drinking water, hydrating, eating, which are natural things. Now, was that the case? Did you have to literally relearn how to
In a
be?
lot of ways, yes,
Okay.
100%. I went from purely corporate to saying this is not something that I can continue doing. And so it was almost like an on-off switch where then I had to be like, what do I do today? Right? Like, okay, now I have all this time. What does one do when they have time that isn't filled by somebody else?
Mhm.
Um, and my kids thought it was an amazing time in life. Although I think they were a little scared because it gave me a lot of opportunity to focus on them.
Then,
Um,
and depending on how old they were, but yeah.
right? Yes, they were in middle school
Okay.
at the
Yeah.
time. So yeah, that middle school is a scary time. You're like, and mom's here, yay.
Yeah. Yeah. I get
Um,
the same
but
thing downstairs.
they really want it. I really am convinced that our kids, while they may not want us like sitting right beside them at every moment, even as teenagers, they want us around.
Yeah.
And
I hope.
side
I
note,
hope
I
so.
used to think, yeah, right. We hope. I used to think that like once I got to the teenage years, I could like back off the accelerator, slow down. Mm-mm. Now I'm convinced you have to accelerate through the turn, right? Like
Mm.
it is even more than it used to. But um, when I kind of went through that transition, one of the things that helped me was going through and going like, okay, what do I care about? Right. And what are some of those non-negotiables for me? What do I want to make sure that I am doing right now in this season? And so I even had like a super simple checklist of the categories. Um, and some of that I learned from, I worked in healthcare, and in healthcare, they brought down the surgical mortality rate by like 47% by making a checklist. And it was simple, it was precise, it was practical, and it was really crazy stuff like introducing yourself to the other members on the surgical team, like saying your name, talking about what body part of the patient you were going to be working on, which side you were going to be working on. Like if you ever go into surgery now, you notice they like make you write where it is. It's those simple, basic things that sometimes help the mortality rate. So, like if we're trying to have our best day, how do we improve that? Sometimes we have to write it down and just be like, okay, did I move? Whatever that means today. Yep. Okay, good. Because it like frees up other space in your brain too.
That's really interesting to be quite honest. I mean, that's a lot of us, me, and other people have these checklists, these to-do lists. Is that something that you're referring to? Because that kind of similar, but still walking into or setting up for today and saying uh, how granular, how precise, how exact does that need to be in order for us to I was about to write something down on this piece of paper so I don't forget it to free up space in our brain. But
Mhm.
you specifically said it reduced the mortality rate. So I'm trying to connect the dots here. What was it about being precise and exact in terms of that space that allowed or that correlated to a reduction in mortality? Do
I
you
think it
have
was just going through the simple things and making sure you weren't taking them for granted, that they were done.
you simply said introducing yourself was part of that schema.
Introduce yourself. I don't know.
Really?
That's a team,
Okay.
right? Wait, if you are you familiar with Mel Robbins and the high five habit at
No,
all?
I'm not. That's why I have these conversations because I learn something new every
I
day.
know the
And
high
so,
five habit. I mean, Mel's a whole bundle of energy, but the high five habit I love because basically it's like, okay, if you look at sports teams, look at NBA teams, one of the predictors of who will do better at the end of the season is the team that is high fiving at the beginning of the season. Because all of a sudden you're building camaraderie. And if you think about it, when you're high fiving, like there's no bad feelings. You're like, yes, right? And so that's building among the team. And so if you can take something like that habit, the high five habit, and you look at yourself in the mirror every morning and you go, I got out of bed. Yeah. Right. Like I brushed my teeth. Yes. I've got this. Yes. It's bringing that dopamine, serotonin, all of those good feel good hormones
okay.
into your system that are setting yourself for the day. And the same thing in a work environment. If anybody wants to figure out how to start to create some of that cohesiveness around your team, just start high fiving people in the office. It'll be amazing.
I would like to see that, but I work virtually too. And so,
You can high
um,
five your students on the screen, right?
that would be interesting. And I think that is definitely a different way of understanding human interaction, especially in this virtual world. Um, I want to go back to something you said earlier, actually, probably throughout this entire conversation so far, and it's the identity or the idea of energy. Um, and then I'm going to forget the word, but that thing that keeps us
The
keeps us
faucet.
alive. Yeah. And I would just because I just want to go back to the idea that in 2022, so over a year ago, October, I did have a heart attack, and so it was just like any other heart attack. Well, I generally keep myself healthy, so like I said, exercise every day. Um, I generally sleep in an okay way. So I'm a fair sleeper. I'm not the best sleeper. I'm a light sleeper. So I get up even if a cricket chirps. So all that stuff being said, and I generally tend to eat pretty good. I do like my fried chicken every once in a while, but I live in the South. But I say all that to say, I really thought that I was doing it right. I was, and my crutch is exercise. So I'm giving my body what I think it really needs to move because that's what it's telling me every day to move. And then I had a heart attack, and the doctors say, you're lucky to be alive. So it really, and then every time I go back to the cardiologist, he kind of says the same thing, just not in the same way. Um, I've talked with other people who are kind of energy healers and really understanding vibration, and that's not kind of really my mental space, but maybe there's some credibility there. And I'm not saying they're not credible. I'm saying that there's credibility there. I just don't understand it. And saying all that to say, they say I could possibly heal my heart. Now, this may not be your space, but everything that you're saying, giving myself a high five would be a good way to start my day. Hydrating more and making sure that it's taken care of is a good way to run the day. Making sure I've got hell, even if I just say people's names before, and I actually make a point, when I have all my podcast conversations, I make it a point to learn how to pronounce their name the way it should be pronounced. Now, your name's pretty easy. Sometimes I get your last name mixed up, but Zoom forgot your last name, so that's cool.
I'm
Um,
sorry. Well,
so
I'm
it's
incognito today.
so there's a lot of things that go on that really create good energy in our lives. And so since my heart attack, I have been having more of those conversations, hopefully, to create good energy in my life. Because to be quite honest, I could use it. I could use more good energy, just to feel good. But to be quite honest with you, I don't want to die of another heart. Don't want to have another heart attack because it hurts like hell. To be quite honest, and the medical team saying if you do have another one, it's going to be it. So I wouldn't mind staying around for a while, but finding a way to create that energy, um, having this conversation with you, getting information that I didn't have before, and really understanding life from a different perspective helps create that energy for me.
And I think that's key. It's like, can we change our perspective? Or can we understand a little bit more about the conscious versus the subconscious brain? And I, like you, am generally a like prove it to me type of person, which is why I spend so much time in the books and reading and whatever. And then I go try it out in my body and my life. And I usually know on some level if it's worth me looking into more, if I really kind of be still and know.
Right.
Um, but I think it's so fascinating. There's so much we can't explain, right? Like love. Can you measure love? Not really,
Not
right?
through numbers.
And not through numbers, but we all know it to be true. And I think that's what we're starting to see more and more come out as we go. Um, Bruce Lipton's a great one, and he talks about during the first 6 to 7 years, we are in this theta brain state as children. And just like, and you'll understand this, you used to get a computer and somebody would say, well, type a document on it. And you'd be like, well, I can't. Well, why not? Because you haven't installed the word program on it, right? So during those first years of our life, we're downloading and downloading and downloading and downloading. And hopefully it's a lot of amazing, good stuff. But if there is fear, anxiety, from our parents, from our home situation, and even little types of things get stuck in our field. And that program, that subconscious program, then runs for the rest of our lives. And we don't even really know it until maybe like you and I, we start to go like, huh, I, I feel stuck. I feel unhappy. I feel like, what is this? And consciously, you're like, I know I've got everything I need. My family loves me. I can make changes. I've got this agency. But that subconscious programming is like, stop. Nope. Nope. We're going to throw you back here. So I think that's part of the lesson and how you kind of really move forward in the
Mm.
energetic world is to number one, realize that we have a subconscious and a conscious brain, part, system, whatever you want to call it. And then start to figure out, like, okay, how do I dig deeper and understand mine? And I'm not a big, like, sit on the couch for hours and go through all of my woes. That's just, it's not how I'm programmed.
Mm.
Um, but I think the energy work is really interesting. And I think we're all energy workers in some way, but am like very, very amateur. Um, but I have been digging into it recently. I've started to learn muscle testing or applied kinesiology. Are you familiar?
Well, I know what kinesiology is, but
Well, so
again, so
applied
this is
kinesiology,
number
have you ever
three.
seen,
I,
and this,
I know
I
I'm the
saw it first
doctor and
on
I feel uneducated.
TikTok.
Go
This will
ahead.
tell you where like you see somebody and they're like, I'm going to press on your arm and tell you if it's true or false. Right. And if it's false, I can press your arm way down. And if it's true, you'll hold steady.
Wow. Is it true?
Well, I've now seen it work and I've been able to do it in my own body. So I'm going to tell you that for me,
It's true.
yes,
Okay.
it's true. Um, I'm sure belief helps on some level to be open to, but when you get into the energetic field, it really is tapping into that subconscious. Um, and if I can close my eyes and ask those questions, I can start to get better answers about then the energy that I have stuck, like the emotions that I have stuck in my body. And it's interesting, the ones that keep coming up for me, discouragement, fear,
Mm.
those types of things, to the point that I'm like, even now, writing them on a rock in my hand and throwing them away so that I can rid myself of it. Um, does it make a difference? I guess we'll see. Right? But I'll tell you, I feel lighter. I feel like the like ties around my heart sometimes that get so tight when I get nervous or anxious about stuff do start to loosen up. And if you told me 10 years ago I'd be sitting here talking to you about that, I'd be like, huh, that's hilarious. No way.
Which is okay, because our, you know 10 years ago, gosh, what was I doing at 44? Definitely not what I'm doing right now, and that's for sure. Um, there was another thing that's going on. I don't want to pull in too many other people, but you and Carrie are doing something really cool. Now, on Mondays, and this is for those who are watching this, on Mondays on LinkedIn, the two of you grab on a Zoom call and you do meditation. Or she does it and you kind of watch, or something. Or you're doing it, but she's the kind of the focal point. And I know I want to have a conversation with the two of you regarding that, but wouldn't mind your insight into some of that. So how and when and where and why did all that get started? And is that part of your healing journey? Is that kind of part of your evolution of who you are as a person?
It definitely is. Part of my leaving of the corporate world was a couple different things that happened in my life. And some of it was a swift kick by the universe or a big assist, right? Like, you're not listening, you need to be doing something different. So we will help you so that you really do
A
something
lot of
different.
people have been a
Um,
lot of people have said that in some way, and sometimes it's even illness or sickness. It's like, hey, time to do something different.
right. And there's a whole nother question around that as to whether we have to go through those pain points, but we'll set that aside. But I did. And to some degree thereafter, right? Like, it was a real dismantling. The dark night of the soul, as some people like to call it. And I still feel like it revisits me from time to time, as it probably does us all. But what I was really kind of reminded of in that moment is what I call the be still and know. So if I was still, and I had to be in that moment because I was like, "Well, I don't really know what's going on. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to, do all this stuff." Then I knew exactly what to do. Then I was reconnected to that inner knowing within me.
Mm.
And then I had the strength, love, ability, energy, whatever it was, to kind of take the next step forward. Um, and that's when I dove back deep into my yoga practice, because I've done yoga forever and a day. I took the teacher training class. Um, at the time, I didn't have enough Zen to actually teach yoga. Like it would have been a disaster for any student in my class to be like, okay, go, count, ready, move, go. Which is not the way a lot of yoga should be done. But as part of that, there is the move your body and then you sit still. And it's in all of that breath work, that meditation, that the things start to drop in,
Mm.
right? Can you get silent so that you can actually hear? And I just feel like, and Carrie feels the same way, we run around like chickens with our heads cut off so often. That is baked into kind of the general corporate world and society at large. And the power of just stopping, and it doesn't have to be the, you know, 15-minute meditation we do, but if people were just to kind of stop and go like, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath, right? And I'm going to recenter myself. Um, all of a sudden it starts to bring your nervous system back into regulation. Andrew Huberman, who's a ophthalmologist and neurobiologist that has a great podcast, teaches one really easy breath, which is a sharp inhale followed by another sharp inhale. So you go, and all of a sudden, just that starts to reset your nervous system. And so we feel like if people again can start to regulate their human systems, then they can relate differently.
Well, then I need to ask one more question, if I can.
Sure.
How do you relate differently to the world? Now that you've got a better appreciation and a better practice of your humanity and your centeredness and your energy, surely your life is different. And you don't have to do it a comparison of, corporate being a lawyer and now it's not what I'm looking for. I'm
Mhm.
really looking for I like to use, you mentioned the word love. You can't measure love. But we live through experience. Everything is about, we have emotions, we have thoughts, we have actions, but we live through experiences. What is your experience of life now
It's
that you're here?
definitely an evolution and a journey. I'll say that. I will say that I look at the world, I feel like, with more wonder and awe than I ever have. And that I move to those so easily. Like I have to tell you, on Thanksgiving, my 15-year-old son was driving us to Thanksgiving dinner. My daughter's in the back. She's singing. And God love her, she cannot carry a tune in a bucket, right?
We
Like
won't share
she
this
gets that
we
from
won't
me.
share this video with her.
Like it is not good. My son can, and he's been through, like, being a 15-year-old boy isn't always easy. But it's John Denver's Take Me Home Country Road comes on. She's belting it out. He starts singing. And that kid can sing. So he's singing, she's singing. I'm like kind of humming along. It'll bring me to tears right now, just thinking about those types of things in my life that I don't think I would have had the space for before, and the pause. And the other big piece of it is just to be able to look at people and go, okay, we really are all connected. And so because I've done some of my own regulation, I've got more capacity to deal with other people that aren't quite as regulated. I don't
Mm.
get the road rage. I don't, it's like, okay, fine. Well, path's not meant for me, right? My kids get tired of hearing that, but I say it a lot because it's like, well, had to happen for a reason, right? That kept us from something we don't know. That person, you can start to look, you're like, that person has not slept. That person has chronic inflammation. That person, and not that it's about diagnosing it, but it's just understanding, okay, they're struggling. Maybe I have more space. So if I can give them more space. And that's where I think we're all leaders in this world, and whether it's leading in the way that you walk through the mall or leading in the way that you talk to the checkout person, or like you're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, wherever else with a whole following having these conversations. The meditation gives us just a little bit of time to start to know ourselves, calm ourselves, so that then we can have that energy ripple out into the world.
I think that's beautiful. I need to I need to do more of that. I need to have more energy so it can ripple out. Hopefully, in some way, shape, or form, these conversations are accomplishing some of that. And so at least that's my intention and my goal and my hope.
I think they totally are. And I think people get stuck in meditation has to be sitting there on a cushion with your eyes closed, saying Om, right? It doesn't have to be that. You can do the visualization like Carrie and I do. You can count your breath. You could do a walking meditation. You could find something that you listen to, whatever it is that starts to bring that space and freedom. And then you can branch out from there.
Cool. I love it. So when do I get to see you and Carrie on the same call? We're going to talk deeper about meditation and its value and how to
Ooh.
do it, actually, because y'all do some really cool stuff on Mondays. But I'm just a observer. I'm not actually trying to do it, because I appreciate the value that you're giving to other people. I don't think it's never been like you said. It's never, certain things are just not us, who we are. But we find, I find solace and I find healing and I find calmness when I connect with other people. At least that's been my journey for the past 2 years. And so having these types of conversations and learning and experiencing what other people have learned to appreciate in life has been so valuable to me. Um, it's given me a better perception and a better appreciation and, and very much a different perspective on what life is, what it should be. So again, thank you. Thank you
Well,
so
thank
much.
you for your kind of authenticity and vulnerability because it's not necessarily an easy place to be when we're told how to be, how to show up, check these boxes, or you won't be. So, I, for one, as I've gone through my own transition and journey, sometimes it's easier to talk about it than others, right? Sometimes it's easier to put it out there. Um, so thank you for being the way shower.
I appreciate that. Let me stop the conversation, well, at least the recording, and hold on to the call.